Welcome to season 15 of the Parenting Aces podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week we have with us Tony Minnis, the former women's tennis coach at LSU in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And Tony comes from a very accomplished tennis family. His dad was a player and coach. His brother and sister both played collegiate tennis. Tony played collegiate tennis himself and was the winningest coach at LSU during his tenure there. Since leaving LSU, Tony has worked in a variety of aspects in coaching. He's worked with individual players, he's worked with collegiate teams, with high school teams, and he's currently working with athletes across a variety of sports on the mental side of their sport, whether that's a team sport or an individual sport. And so in this week's episode, Tony and I dive into what that work looks like and how junior tennis families can utilize the tools that Tony is developing to make the junior tennis journey a more pleasant one. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Tony Minnis. Now sit back, relax, and we'll dive right in. Tony, it's so good to see you, and I'm so happy to have you back on the podcast. We have stayed in touch all these years, and we have our Louisiana roots in common, and I'm just thrilled to have you back on for season 15.
Yeah, at least it's like 15 seasons. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's funny because when I was first coaching, when I was coaching, you first started and you've really grown and done very well.
Well, it's a passion project, as you well know, and you are one to inspire passion projects as well. That's kind of been at the root of everything you've done in your career as well. A love for this game, a love for helping young people, and I think we have a lot of that in common. So excited to dive into what you're doing currently.
Absolutely. No, it's actually been a lot of fun. It's funny because 21 years of coaching, I really don't have much desire to get on the tennis court, but at the same time, I'm enjoying helping a lot of college athletes, but even more so junior tennis players. And actually, yesterday I worked with a golfer. 2 days ago, I worked with a basketball player. So it really translates to all sports.
For sure. And the mental side of athletics has really been at the forefront of a lot of conversations over the past few years. We've seen lots of athletes come forward and talk about their mental struggles when competing, when training, staying motivated, and all those things. And it's a topic of conversation that I broach very regularly in my consults with families. So I'm excited to get your take on it and hear more about the work that you're currently doing and why you decided to go down this path working on the mental side of things when you have, for decades been coaching on the court. And I think it's going to be a great conversation for the tennis families to hear about. So tell us what inspired you to kind of shift your focus or adjust your focus to move into coaching the mental side of sport?
Well, it's interesting because when I was coaching at LSU, I noticed pretty quickly how important and how a lot of the kids didn't really understand how to compete and really didn't understand the process. And I think the most underrated aspect of sports today is the mental component. For example, the first question I walk in when I speak to a collegiate team, the first question when I ask individuals, I'll say, hey, what percentage of tennis or basketball or football is mental? What percentage is physical? And I always get 80% mental, 90% mental, 75% mental. And then I'm like, well, if tennis or basketball or soccer is 80% mental, how much time do you spend working on your mental game? And then so then I say, well, let me ask you a question. If you're taking a chemistry class and the teacher comes in and says, I'm giving you a test and I'm going to give you 20% of the information, but the other 80% you have to figure out on your own, how much confidence would you have? And so a lot of it's a lot more detailed than the average person realizes. And it's interesting because in coaching, I had three players that were ranked higher than the rest, three girls that were, consistently top 10 in the country. And what separated them was the mental capacity to stay focused and concentrated over long periods of time and not let emotion get in the way. And so it's amazing because when there's so many times when athletes are like, I can't hit a forehand, or I can't, it's the stroke, the stroke, the stroke. And it is a stroke, but at the same time, it's a mindset. And so over the course of the last few years, I've been like studying like a Novak Djokovic, Michael Jordan, a Kobe Bryant, a Tom Brady, at Serena Williams, athletes that excel at their sport, and it is all between the ears. One thing that's very interesting that people don't know, Tom Brady's a great example of a guy that didn't even start in college and sat the bench. And his junior year, he went and started working with a mental coach. And I think he credits a lot of his success to a guy that had been at the University of Michigan for like 30 years. And so it's challenging for me because it's funny because I was coaching for 21 years as a head coach, a couple years as assistant, and been involved with that. And it's just something different. And the whole way I got started was the former coach at University of Kentucky. It's a good friend of mine, Carlos Estrada, and they were in town to play Tulane. And I had dinner in New Orleans with them. I drove down there and we had dinner. And he said, "Hey, would you talk to my team?" And I said, "Sure." And so afterwards, I talked to him, and he was like, "Man, you're not bad at this." And so from there, it just started. And I've spoken probably at over 30 colleges, and I've probably worked with over 60 or 70 kids in various sports. And it's just something that I enjoy doing.
I love it. I love it. And, quite honestly, I get the question, and the question gets posted in our Facebook group all the time. My kid does so great in practice, and then they get in a tournament setting and they can't hit the side of a barn. How do I help them overcome whatever it is that's blocking them from being able to compete effectively? And and I know, and a lot of people know that it is the mental and emotional piece. Of course, they know how to hit a forehand. Of course, they know how to hit a serve. But when you add in that stress and pressure of trying to win a match and progress through a tournament draw, all of a sudden the game looks very, very different.
Well, I think that the couple of the biggest things that I focus on is in society today, there's too much of a focus on winning and not enough focus on doing the right thing. And so there are different things that I use to help kids focus on the process, not the result. And it sounds easy, but it's very difficult because they're so I call my four-letter word UTR because I get so tired of hearing, and it's funny because there's always, and so I'm asking because the funny thing about UTR is UTR is not anything new. There've been rankings since the beginning of tennis, and so it's no different. So like when I was growing up in juniors, I'm ranked either, you know, 20 or 15 or whatever it may be, and so you see, okay, this guy's ranked 8 or this guy's ranked 30, and so it's really not any different, but there's an obsession over it. And so one of the things that I think gets kids in trouble is they go out there with these expectations. And the expectation is if I'm a 10 UTR and a kid I plays 8.5, I should beat him. And so, I always say, well, let me ask you a question. Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, Serena, if that's the case, they would never lose, because on a given day, anything can happen. And so the easiest way to go about that is focusing on the process, focusing on one point at a time, and not getting so caught up with the ranking or what other people think. Or, I hear of kids, and for parents listening, the worst two things that you could do that are terrible for your kids is number one, hide because you protect your UTR ranking and not play tournaments. And secondly, if you lose in a tournament, not play the backdraw because one of the things college coaches do is they look to see what type of character this kid has, how are they going to compete, I think so many players are so caught up and whenever I work with kids, 14, 15, 16, I always tell them I recruited for 21 years as a head coach and 2 as an assistant, and I have no idea what the majority of the kids I recruited were ranked when they're 15. What you're looking for is getting better. And so if you focus on improving your mental aspect, your physical, your technique, but the other part of the mental thing that a lot of people don't understand, they're components. It's not just about how you think, which is huge, but the same thing. How are your actions every day? How are you treating conditioning? How are you treating your diet? How are you treating weightlifting? How are you treating all those things to put yourself in the best position to be successful? And so I think a lot of the players don't understand and a lot of parents as well, they're so focused on the result and not understanding the process to get to that result. And so that's something that I go through, for example, yesterday I'm working with a kid, he's a golfer, and he's trying to get a scholarship and breaking down, okay, his short game and putting, focusing on, those are the aspects that he has the most trouble with. Okay, what are you going about? Are you researching? Are you looking at some of the greatest golfers of all time, some of the great golfers currently that's their strength? And so there's a lot to it. And so typically on an average, I do an hour session uh, every 2 to 3 weeks, and I do it like over the phone, and it works out great. And I've had clients for like 3 years and 2 years, and several of them gone on to get scholarships and things in various sports, mainly tennis, but I do some other sports as well. But the unique, Lisa, one of the funniest things that to show you how this translates to every sport, I had a parent reach out to me and said, "Hey, my son's a swimmer and he's trying to, swim in college. Can you help him?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And so I go and I sit with the kid, and the majority of the clients I have are out of town, but they're, a handful here in town. And when they're in town, I'll go to their house and do it face to face. And so I'm sitting with this kid, and he's like, "Man, this is helping me a lot." And I walked out to the house going, "I bet you they have no idea that I have no idea how to swim." But it doesn't matter that, it's and so one of the most fortunate things that I experienced at LSU was I was around some phenomenal coaches. When I was there, Nick Saban was there, Skip Bertman won 5 national championships, Sue Gunner, Women's Hall of Fame, Dee Dee Broja. Just on and on. Dale Brown, basketball coach, Coach Shaq. So I was young and I'm seeing all these guys, and I would just, pick their brain, pick their brain, pick their brain. And it kept coming back to, like, Coach Burton was extremely big into motivation, and Coach Brown as well. And it is very interesting. I can remember Nick Saban, like one of the first meetings we had, and him bringing in his sports psychologist from Michigan State. He flew him in, and so he's huge into that. And so I think and again, this is not any indictment on, practically and hitting balls, but if you don't work on between the ears, it doesn't matter. How good your forehand is. If you don't have that ability to stay concentrated and focused for long periods of time, to not let emotion get in the way and things of that nature, you're going to have a hard time. And so that's kind of the things that I've done to break things down. And again, I've got it, doing more and more with various kids, and then the colleges as well. One of the things that's very interesting when I work with a college team, one of the first things I ask them is, what are the weaknesses of this team? And when I ask that question, nobody wants to address or answer that, because athletes or people in general don't like doing things they're uncomfortable with. And so what I do is sit down and force them to address those issues. And all of a sudden, because I think, Lisa, one of the things in our society that has it's beneficial, all the specialists, whether it be weight coach, conditioning coach, tennis coach, me, and mental coach. But so many kids today wait to be told what to do and don't take ownership themselves. But when you look at the top athletes, they're taking total ownership of it. There's a video that I always share with the kids I work with of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and it's side by side. Kobe studied Jordan to such a T that his technique, his spots on the floor, his footwork, all of it is identical. And so I think that one of the biggest issues I see with collegiate athletes and kids is, if you're struggling with your second serve, you don't need to wait for me as a coach to go say, hey, go work on your second serve. You need to take initiative to do it on your own. And so I think that because they're so specialized, they're waiting for somebody to think for them instead of thinking for themselves.
That's so interesting. And you're absolutely right. What I find very interesting as well is you were saying earlier about putting in this work. And if an athlete knows they have put in the work, they have done the things every single day that they need to do in order to get better. And people that have been watching or listening to this podcast for a while have heard me say over and over again, the goal is to get 1% better every day at something, whether it's your footwork, whether it's your forehand, whether it's the mental side of things. That putting in the work to get 1% better each day gives you the confidence to step onto the tournament court, the match court, knowing that you are ready. You have done the work. You are ready to compete. You've got all the tools to go out and play a good competitive match. Notice I didn't say you've got all the tools to go out and win a match, because winning and losing is not in the control of the individual athlete. But effort, preparation, work, all of that is within the control of the individual athlete.
Well, you would be surprised how much I hear, for example, how much these kids are concerned about what other people think. And this is
We're in a social media generation. I mean, is it any wonder? Every single thing is being posted on Instagram, TikTok, wherever, and being judged.
Right. Well, and one of the analogies I use as an example, I'll say, if we're playing Tennessee and we go out and I'm coaching and effort's great, attitude's great, fighting as hard as we can. We're walking off the court and I'm going, okay, hey, great effort, ladies. We didn't win, but now we have to figure out what we need to do to get better. They walk out of the locker room and everybody's like, you guys lost. If we go play Alabama and I'm like, effort's bad, attitude's bad, but somehow we win, I'm all over them. And they walk out of the locker room, it's like, hey, you guys won. And so the thing that I see that you try to instill is not to have a mixed message, because the goal is to reach your ultimate potential. You have to do the right thing consistently. And if you worried so much about the result and not the process to get to where you're going, then and look, I get it. I was super competitive, but at the same time, you have to be willing to say, hey, great effort, great attitude. And so if you instill that consistency in these kids, and if they buy into it, then they have a chance to be the best as they can be, because they're doing the right thing on a consistent basis. And that's probably the biggest thing that I see, because the other piece of it that's pretty funny. I'll always say, how old are you? So I'm like 15. I go, do you know at your age Michael Jordan was cut from his basketball team? No. Do you know at your age Tom Brady wasn't even highly recruited started? Do you know at your age Steph Curry got offered one scholarship? And so it's something that because I think that there's such a need for that instant gratification, and not understanding how it takes time, and there are different things you have to do. So it's been very fascinating. And it's some of the things that come out of the kid's mouth. I'm sitting on the phone, kind of going, "Oh my God, I got a lot of work to do here." But at the same time, it's gratifying. It's fun, because my goal is to help every kid potentially get a scholarship. And the thing is, whether it be a Georgia, USC, Ohio State, or whether it be a, Millsaps, Elon College, wherever it may be. I mean, the thing that you have to look at is there are so many colleges around the country, but the big thing that parents and kids need to understand, it's not your interpretation what hard work is, it's with the coach's interpretation what hard work is. Because there's so many kids that kind of go, I'm working really hard. And I'm like, okay, for your standard. But what's the thing you have to take time and research is try to understand the standards that you're trying. So if you tell me, okay, I want to go to play at LSU, or I want to go to play at Kentucky, okay, and I'm like, okay, this is what it's going to take. Okay, if you're telling me you want to do this, this isn't your opinion of what it's going to take. I'm telling you as a former college coach, this is what it's going to take. Now, it's okay to say, I don't want to do that, but then you can't say, I don't want to do that and then go to those schools because it requires that type of work ethic, focus, determination. And a lot of kids don't realize it until too late. And so I think that a lot of the things, right now in college tennis, there's a big deal with a lot of international kids and all that, which, I get. But at the same time, try to look past that and say, okay, if my goal is really to get to this level, this is what I'm going to have to do. And it is what it is. This is kind of where college tennis is at right now. And if I want to get there, I've got to do the work it takes.
Absolutely. And I think, you have hit the nail on the head, Tony. And one of the things that a lot of junior coaches either don't understand or neglect to share with the families that they're working with is that notion of this is what it's going to take for you to get there. Are you willing to do that? And put the onus on the player and on the family in some regards, because the family has to support the player financially and time wise and all of that. But the player has to take ownership and has to commit to doing that work. If they're not willing to commit to doing that work, then the goal needs to be adjusted. And it's fine, there's no judgment around it, but let's all be honest with each other about this.
Well, and here's a perfect example. There's a client that I'm working with that is frustrated because of the work he puts in, but at the other and other kids don't put in that same work. And so I'm like, well, maybe they put in the mental work. Maybe that's why and so a lot of times it goes hand in hand. It's very interesting. And so one of the things I do, Lisa, a lot is as I'm talking to a client, I have a ton of videos, and these are great athletes. They're very sports, and I will show them a Tiger Woods, show them, a Drew Brees or whatever. And as we're talking, send a video to reinforce what I'm saying as they're saying the same thing. And at the end of it, it's always interesting. I'll say, okay, I just showed you a video of, Serena Williams, Tom Brady, of LeBron James. How many times did they talk about hitting a forehand? None. How many times did they talk about throwing a pass? None. How many times did they talk about the dribble of their shot? None. They talk about their mentality. And so I think that from a standpoint, and these are collegiate teams as well, it's a mentality of how you approach things and how you do things. And that can be learned and taught, but it's a process that takes time and it's a process that you have to focus on. And so, the consistency when you're looking at coaches in the huddle, how much are they talking about strategy and how much are they talking about attitude? A lot's about attitude. And so you can't two things. And I'll say, so let me ask you a question. Can you do these two things at one? Oh my God, I missed this shot. I suck. This is terrible. And at the same time, thinking about what do I need to do to win the next point? And so there have been so many studies that show that the difference in the top players and the players that are average is how long do you stay in that negative emotion? If you're in that negative, there's some players that miss an easy forehand on top of the net and they stay in that negative emotion for the next 2 minutes. And there are some that kind of let it go after 15 seconds. And there's some that stay in that negative emotion for like 10 minutes. And so it all depends on how quickly you can get out of it. This is a very interesting. I encourage a lot of the people listening to this to watch it. Novak Djokovic interview in 60 Minutes, and this was pretty interesting because he got offended when the guy interviewed him and said, "Your gift is your mental," and he's like, "No, no, no, it's not a gift. It's something I work on." And Djokovic utilizes yoga, works on breathing, works on meditation, does all those things. And so he constantly is looking for solutions to get better. And so I think that a lot of the kids that I see are thinking strictly the result instead of understanding what it takes to get to that result, and also understanding that failure is a big part of it. I mean, I think that the worst thing for parents is to try to protect your kid from failing, because the things that you learn when you when like that's what I'm saying, like going to tournaments and saying, okay, I'm going to protect my UTR and I'm not going to play backdraw. You learn through adversity, and for example, in the NFL right now, there are four quarterbacks that were 5 years ago, 6 years ago, all taken one or two in the draft, and they were all cut from their team, and now they're all succeeding 5, 6 years later. But they went through tough times and they went through ups and downs. And so there's so many examples of this. And the coolest thing I would say is this has happened numerous times when I'm working with kids. Like, does this help your game? And like, it's helped my life, because these are really life, because it's really life skills. And I've always thought that sports is a great way to teach life skills, because there's so many things in sports that you can learn. And so it's kind of it goes hand in hand with utilizing it all. And again, it's been it's the good thing about it is, as a college coach, you're worried 24/7 about the kids, but you do this 1 hour session, so I'm able to, kind of enjoy, do other things as well. You don't have that worry about, what are they doing outside of the team itself. So it's been a lot of fun.
I love it. So, for those players and parents that may be watching or listening to this, what are some specific things that these kids can do to work towards being better at the emotional piece of competition? What are some exercises and or drills or you know readings or games or something that they can actually do at home to help themselves get better?
Well, I think one of the first things that you see great athletes do is they're very consistent in their rituals. And basically, how many times do you see a player that says, "Okay, I bounce the ball 4 times before I serve," but when they're pissed, they bounce it once, or they go.
Yeah.
So basically, so understanding momentum and understanding rituals, and the ultimate example of that is Nadal. Another great example of that is Steph Curry, that have great rituals that they utilize. So I encourage a lot to look and try to study rituals, because, and it doesn't just start like when you walk on the court. There's a preparation ahead of time. There's a preparation with, one of the things, Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, he wears the exact same ugly outfit to work every single day. Well, that's one less thing he has to think about. So I encourage the athletes to set up a schedule of rituals that they do the morning of, or going into and during the matches that they utilize. Another thing that,
Let me interrupt you 1 second, Tony, because I think it's important that you don't try these rituals for the first time in a tournament setting. These are
no,
things that you have to work on and hone and practice during your daily drills or lessons or practice matches. So it's the same with nutrition. You don't want to try a new protein drink or a new recovery drink during a tournament for the first time. You want to test this out in a non-pressure setting to make sure that you can tweak it properly and that it's working properly for you. So as important as all these rituals are, and they are super important and oftentimes the difference maker between one player and another, this is something that has to be tested and tweaked and honed on the practice court.
absolutely, no, absolutely. And I think that a lot of it, to be honest, is um, a lot of kids, they just don't know. I mean, a lot of it is not, they just don't know, and you can see in the majority are listening and learning and implementing, but I think a lot of it is just not having information and understanding. But and so I encourage, hey, go to YouTube and pull up Nadal and look at his ritual. I mean, go to and kind of research and look at other sports and other athletes as well. So that's one big thing. I also encourage a lot to focus on deep breathing and relaxation as you're playing, making sure that you're understanding uh, momentum and understanding that when you're stressed, working on your breathing, working on staying relaxed and loose, working on making sure your eyes aren't darting around. One of the things I'm always saying, and this is funny, specifically for tennis, this probably drives me more nuts than anything. I was playing a match, and this mom and her sister were screaming against my opponent, and I'm always like, let me ask you a question. I coached at LSU, and when Texas A&M plays LSU, there are 100,000 people yelling at the quarterback, or the 15,000 people yelling at the guy shooting free throws. Why are you letting two people affect your mindset? Just block that out. I hear that more than because, and it's so true. And in other sports, I mean, there are always thousands of people watching, and they're not affected. And so I think a lot of times, kids looking at their parents, and so the thing that I try to stress the most is focus on looking for solutions, not the problem. And in looking for solutions, what you're trying to do is you have a choice. You at 2 all, 15 all, miss an overhead on top of the net, can either focus on I missed the overhead, or think about, okay, what do I need to do to win the next point? Okay. And I'll always say, okay, if I'm playing, I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to kick it to his backhand, and thinking tennis. And so if you start thinking that way, you're not thinking about other factors that can have an effect on bringing you down. Because the easy part, it's funny because, and I'll ask them, you'll hear, I can't believe I missed that shot, or my backhand sucks, or this sucks. But you never hear a kid say, I'm so mentally weak, which is probably the truth. And so there's a lot of it that a lot of kids really, it's a lot of, I saw this video with Venus and Serena talking. It was pretty incredible. And they were saying, in order to be the best, you have to be totally honest with yourself. And I'm sitting there thinking, and Venus was saying how she was kind of soft at a time. And Serena was saying how she could have been fitter. And I'm thinking, these are two of the greatest women ever to play any sport. Okay. But a lot of this, is not looking for excuses, not blaming, your coach, not taking ownership yourself and putting the onus on yourself. And so, if you want to get to one thing I've seen as a college player and a coach is you can do anything you put your mind to doing, if you're willing to put in the time. And so don't let anything stop you. Have the right mindset and attitude.
Well, and just thinking about how to practice these skills, I talk a lot about the importance of playing practice matches and playing coached practice matches where the coach is present and working on things in the setting of a match actually taking place. And so the coach has a role here, the junior coach, by being present at these practice matches when a player, in using your example, Tony, misses a sitter overhead on top of the net, the coach can immediately jump in and say, okay, what do you need to do to win the next point? Put that message into the player's head so they realize that's the immediate thought, not I suck because I missed this sitter overhead on top of the net, but I now have an opportunity to do something to take back control of this next point. And I've mentioned this previously, but I had an opportunity at the US Open Juniors very early on in Parenting Aces' life to sit behind the coach of one of the junior players competing. And after each point that was played, that junior coach would yell to her player, next point, this point, next point, this point, and just keeping that player focused on what they needed to do next, not looking back at how they failed on the previous point.
Well, and I think to go along with that, probably one of the biggest issues you see is that players don't understand is, let's say you win a tough first set 7-5 and you relax the next few games of the second set. Those two games can cost you that set. And so
Absolutely.
the thing that you see at the top level is just basically, and it's not easy to do by any stretch, but there are different ways to go about it. But it's important to stay present, and focus on each point, and make each point your masterpiece, and don't focus on the fact that, okay, I won 7-5, I can relax now. Because here's a good example. I'll ask the player, I'll say, hey, when you're down match point, how hard do you play? And they're like, oh man, I'm not losing. I'm playing extremely hard. I'm like, okay, the way you play match point is the way Djokovic plays every, and that's what they don't understand. Like the thing, coaching in the SEC, which is, probably, if not the best, but one of the best conferences in the schedule we played, uh, you, they give you nothing. You go away mentally, you're in trouble. And so you have to stay present, stay focused, and stay intense on it. And I would say that probably like number 1, 2 in the SEC is probably equivalent to 250 to 400 in the world, as far as level. And that level, it's a consistency and intensity. And I think that if kids today can really understand how to maintain it. But switching sports, I was working with a college football player, and he was having trouble with dropping a pass, and basically struggling with the fact that I dropped a pass and not letting it get in his head. I just somebody the other night missing a shot in basketball, high school girls basketball. So it goes along. It's just a mindset that, but when you see the top athletes, they have that ability to have a short memory. And that's something that that I think kids don't understand. One thing is pretty funny. I'll ask the kid, I'll say, hey, tell me a match that you lost in the last year that in your mind you shouldn't have lost, and it was a terrible loss for you. Oh yeah, 9 months ago I lost this kid. I'm like, did the world end? No. Did it come up? Because the thing is, like, failure is, it keeps going. Like, you lost a match. It's not like this is the last match you're ever going to play. You keep playing, and so you lose a match. And so the thought should be, okay, I lost this match. When I play this guy again, what do I need to do to beat this guy? How do I improve? You don't focus on, I can't, his UTR is this, or I can't believe I lost to him. I should have won. I should have. The things that drive, I should have. What does that mean? I should have beaten that person. I should beat this team. It's not about that. It's about I can tell you as a college coach, if we're ranked 20 and we're playing a team ranked 50, and people, oh, you should beat that team. I'm like, ready to, like, are you crazy? This team's really good. It's amazing. Or if we're ranked 20,
But
hello?
Tony, that's a respect thing too. And this is another piece that has kind of gone AWOL from junior tennis. And I can't speak to other sports because I don't have experience in them. But having respect for the person on the other side of the net, or the people, if you're playing doubles on the other side of the net, is crucial. If you don't have respect for them, that means you're not bringing your most intense, powerful, focused game every point, because you think they aren't worthy of that from you. And so teaching our kids to have that respect for the opponent, whether that opponent's ranked higher than them or lower than them, is irrelevant. That opponent is out there to win, just like you are out there to win. And you better have respect for that and bring your A game every single time, whatever that means on a given day. And granted, you may not have slept well the night before. Maybe you didn't eat as well as you should have, but you still bring the best you have to offer to every single competitive opportunity. That's showing respect for the opponent and for the game.
Well, I think to go along with that, what I find a lot is a lot of the respect also goes with the style. So if they're playing, quote, somebody that pushes,
Mm-hmm.
that gets in their head because as opposed to saying, okay, how am I going to beat this guy or girl? They're thinking, I can't believe I lose it to a pusher. And so, I mean, I hear this all the time. Like the
But
type
the
of player,
reality is, if you can't figure out how to beat that person was the better player today.
but it's almost sometimes it's all it's funny. I was working with a AAU basketball team, and I got there early and they're warming up, and in the warm up, these guys are like trying all these different dunks and stuff. And I'm like, hey, why not try to work on using your left hand layup? Why not try? Like everything is about looking cool. And I've been told I want to look cool. I hear that, and I'm just going, And so a lot of it is not necessarily um, winning; it's how you look winning. They want to look a certain way. And that's the danger. The danger part of, you hear college, especially basketball players, talk about it all the time, how Sports Center has ruined a lot of basketball because the guys are just wanting the highlight that they, to look cool, to look flashy. And one of the things that, well, Serena does this. Well, you're not Serena. Or Federer does. You're not Federer. Not understanding like there are some. So I try to showcase when I'm talking tennis players that kind of overachieve with their talent because like trying to emulate Federer. I mean, this guy's just incredible with what he can do, and you could play till you're 3,000 and you can't do what he can do. But look at some of the players that kind of grind more and play more and try to emulate that as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so interesting, it really is. But I think the thing is, what I've seen at the highest level in college is if you don't have it between the ears, it doesn't matter. I mean, there are some very few that just have such gifted physical tools, but for the most part, you have to have that resilience, you have to have that toughness, you have to have that mindset to be successful.
And as we've been talking this whole time, those are things that you can work on, that you can improve on. Not everybody comes out of the womb mentally tough, just as not everybody comes out of the womb able to hit a tweener. But you can work on these skills and get better at them so that your overall performance as a tennis player improves.
And that's why I love using examples of like a Tom Brady and a Steph Curry who don't necessarily have these unbelievable physical gifts, but they're mentally so tough, and others as well. And I think that
But
that's
Tony, I'm going to interrupt you because when you say mentally so tough, you don't just mean their warrior mentality. You also mean that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you mean is that they have the ability to recognize that they have to put the work in every day in order to stay at a level or get to that level in the first place. So, yes, they show that mental toughness on the field or on the court, but where we aren't seeing it is that day to day, I'm getting out of bed even though I'm really tired. I'm going to the gym even though I'm really sore. I'm watching video even though I am just, ready to go curl up in the fetal position because I've already worked so hard today. They are pushing themselves to do the small things that show up as mental toughness on the competition court
well,
or field.
a step further. We hadn't touched on this. One of the questions that I'm asking the most is, how much time do you spend on your phone a week? And I always get like 25, I'm like 25 hours. So if you cut that time, just say you cut 8 hours of that and worked on your tennis, how much better you want to get. I think that the biggest thing, without question, that probably drives me the most nuts when I'm working with this is it's about quality time on the court. It's not about quantity. And
Absolutely.
to see waste, I don't like wasting time. And so when you basically what you're trying to form are habits and standards. And so I'd rather see you go out on the court for 2 hours and just kill it than 4 hours and kind of goof around and stuff. And a lot of kids think that, okay, I put in 6 hours, but what's the quality? How intense and how hard. And I think a lot of that, if kids could really focus on the quality of what they're doing instead of the quantity and have a consistency and standard, and that's where you get good. Because and I think there's also a thought process that, okay, I can do this in practice, but in a match, I won't do that. And it doesn't work that way. You
No.
have to have proper mindset across the board in matches and practice. So there's so many components, and what's interesting is every kid has something a little different. There's some that issues with confidence, some that issues with controlled emotion, some that issues with focus, and it just kind of it's just a process that just takes time to kind of get going.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony, if people are interested in working with you, how do they find you?
Yeah, my cell number, I can you may just give you my number is actually
You can share it with me. I'll put it in the show notes so people can get that on parentingaces.com.
yeah, just I'm cell or email. I get a lot of people just randomly. I'm getting a lot of referrals now of people just reaching out just from other people working with them. And so just call my cell or email me and get in touch. And like I said, I have kids all over the country, and so and so just one thing as cool as the phone. I can just hop on the phone like this and do calls and stuff. It works out really good.
Yeah, love it. Well, if you have the opportunity for your child to work with Tony, he has a very successful track record of working with athletes, both at the junior and collegiate level. And he's just an all around good guy, too, on top of that. So I recommend that you check the show notes, get Tony's contact info, and reach out, especially if you are a parent or a player who says, I do this so well in practice, but then I get to a tournament and I just choke. And this is where the work Tony's doing can really come in and make a difference in the way that your journey progresses. So, Tony, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us. It's been such a pleasure.
One of the jokes I have with all the parents, if all else fails, we can resort to electric shock, but I have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, let's
So
not do that.
yeah, at least I appreciate your time. It's great seeing you. You look awesome.
Great to see you too, as always, and look forward to our next catch up.
Okay, all right. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. To my audience, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on Parenting Aces.